Sorry, Carol. I have to ask. Obviously, I know it's a much different landscape now, but if like, because we've seen a lot of old faces kind of coming in, even if they're for one-off things for Ring of Honor. If the call ever came in, hey, look, would you come in one-off appearance, or even come in and be one of our stars here, or which is that something you'd instantly jump on at this point?
Yeah, 100%. Like, yeah, if this is the thing, man, like if a big time wrestling company comes to you and they say we're going to pay you lots of money to wrestle really good wrestlers and take your career to the next level, who wouldn't want to take that shot?
Carol.
I was just going to ask there kind of quickly about COVID because I'm interested in people's answers because we get different answers for everybody. But for you, obviously, the Ring of Honor thing doesn't end up happening. Everything gets shut down. Was it nice to kind of take a step away from wrestling for a while? Because at this stage, you've been wrestling for near on 15 years. Was it nice to take that step away, or was it hard to kind of like find stuff to do now that you're not wrestling?
It was terrifying because I realized how much of a genuine psychopath I probably am, right? So when COVID happened, I started to think, okay, well, people are going to use this time to probably get lazy, get fat. Whenever you don't have shows, that's usually when you start to enjoy yourself a little bit more and indulge. And I was like, man, you gotta be chasing everyone. Do you know what I mean? Like, start making moves. So I cut down. I got the most lean I think that I've ever been. Was in ridiculous shape, and I mean, this was like a couple of months into COVID. And then after a while, I realized, okay, like maybe this is, gonna be a little bit longer. I'm gonna be at home for longer, so I'm gonna go on my first bulk, right? But so I bulked up from 165 pounds to 206 pounds and then cut back down. I'm back down to about 176 now. So I went through this whole process, but during this time as well, like what kind of one of those things where I just started to try and find different challenges, right? But I also had this awareness that a lot of the decisions that I've made throughout my career have kind of come from a place of fear rather than a decision being like of this is a sense of direction and taking this. It's kind of been more like, well, I don't really want to do that because this might happen. And when you just start realizing that you're just making up bullshit fucking excuses to yourself, right? Like it becomes so much more empowering. So I put myself in positions because I had to change who I was inside, right? So anything that I could do to make myself feel uncomfortable, I did. So I at that time I heard of a guy called David Goggins, who is one of my heroes, right? Former US Navy SEAL, absolute fucking madman who just does ridiculous challenges. And he has this challenge, which is to run 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours straight. And I heard about it and I would think to myself, I was like, damn it, like anybody who can do that, in my eyes, is a legitimate badass, like fair play, right? So it got to a Friday morning and I was like, you know what? I can, it's only going to take 2 days. I can wake up on Sunday morning and I can either, if I think that anybody that can do that is a badass, I can wake up on Sunday morning and think of myself as a badass in the same vein as them. Or I can wake up on Sunday morning and think of myself as an absolute pussy for not doing it. Right. And I was like, well, what are you going to do? All right, 8 o'clock comes, I'm going on my first run, right? So run one done. Okay, cool. Gets to 12 o'clock. Okay, here comes run two. Before you know it, so many runs deep. And you have these moments when you're out running by yourself and you're like, look, if I just walked home right now or just sat on a park bench, nobody would know. And, like I could still say that I did it. And when you start hearing that voice and and you ignore it and you say, no, fuck that. We're holding ourselves accountable. You're fucking watching, right? You know that you didn't do this. You know, you didn't fucking commit to the process. You know that you fucking shortchanged yourself. Get out there and fucking do it. When you start listening to that voice comes empowering. And then suddenly, like, you start seeing all these excuses that you could have and you start ignoring them. That then becomes so much more empowering. So this entire time that we're, locked down or whatever, like, it became this time where I was just challenging myself in so many different ways. There were days where I would go for a run over, like, where I live, there's these massive hills in the middle of the town, right? So I would go for these runs over these hills with a 10-kilo weight vest on and my Vivo barefoot. So these shoes that are meant to make you feel like you're barefoot, right? every 5 minutes I would stop and I would do 50 reps of an exercise. Like I had an exercise band with me, so I could tie it off against a fence post, do rows or push-ups or sit-ups or whatever. And I would do 10 burpees, right? And I had to run to this point and I had to run back, bearing in mind that this is up a hill in the middle of a storm, right? So you have absolutely every excuse that you want, like, oh, it's cold, it's raining, right? Like, just cut the fucking noise out and start thinking about, okay, who are you in those moments? And it's not a case of like, I don't feel like I smashed it. I like, there was a ton of times where you get to points where all you want to do is quit. And when you reach that point, that's when you have to rewire your neurological pathways and you have to start talking to yourself in a different way. It's like, cool, yeah, it fucking sucks. Yeah, it's raining. Yeah, you're wet. Who gives a fuck? Are you going to get the job done or not, son? Let's go, right? So like, this was the voice that I then started to reaffirm in my own head, right? There were times where I would go for runs in the middle of the night at like 3 a.m. through forests by myself, right? Yeah, you're gonna confront like certain feelings of being fearful or whatever. You hear something moving in the bushes next to you, you don't know what it is. Initially you're kind of like scared, but you're like, no man, like fuck it, who cares? Like, find that point and overcome it. Like I got into cold water therapies, so doing, I think the coldest that I've done has been like minus 0.5 degrees or something like that. 10 minutes bathing in that. Once again, it's actually really fucking easy to do because all you're doing is sitting there. But the temperature and the, breaking the ice just to get in the barrel, when you climb inside, every fiber of your being is telling you, what the fuck are you doing? Get the fuck out right now, But once again, it is finding that voice and then talking yourself through that. And, it is creating this inner monologue that is helping you to succeed. It is helping you to push yourself forward. It is helping you to become a better version of yourself. And that's the problem, is that I think that so many people are completely oblivious and unaware of how much genuine greatness they are capable of, because they just never push themselves. They just never get out of their comfort zone and push themselves into a completely different route. And all I did was go down so many different rabbit holes of, okay, well, what happens if we do this? How does this change everything else in my life? Do you know what I mean? It made me a lot more conscious of my day-to-day habits. If one thing, we had a pool table in, set up in our living room for the first couple of months of COVID. So, we come downstairs, we're like, hey, let's have a coffee. Do you fancy a game? For the rest of the day, you just have this greater sense of focus because you've started your day by trying to be focused, by trying not to just come in and smack the balls as hard as you can, but being more deliberate. That carries over into different areas of your life. All these little different things, all these challenges that I was going through, there were things that I was taking away from it that was carrying over into the rest of my life. And that has helped me in the last few years live a completely different, life with purpose and just being a lot more deliberate with what it is that I was doing. And it definitely changed my mindset in regards to a lot of things. So when I came back to wrestling, I felt like I was a new person, with all the experience that I'd had and, all the wrestling experience that I'd had, because like, okay, cool. Now I'm a different animal. Now I'm just a different cat. And like, it's time to do something different in this business.
I love that answer. Really love that. And like, there's such a powerful message in that as well, that a lot of people will listen to as they're listening to this. Like, that's really, like, we've talked to a lot of people about how they've spent COVID, and to hear your determination, but like to see your determination from when you started your career, about going into the acting school, the drama schools, and all the hard work that you put into then getting to COVID and still putting in that hard work. It's crazy to see, and you can see with the athlete that you've been in, the career that you've had, about how much hard work you've put in. It's amazing. Like,
the people who I admire the most are the old geezers where you can tell the fire never went out. Do you know what I mean? Like, my stepfather-in-law, he's in his 80s. He started training when he was 15. He's never stopped. He is this just boulder of an old man, right? And like, he's really affectionate as well, which hurts because he'll grab you and he'll pull you in and he'll give you this big hug, but it is like walking into a fucking brick wall, right? And it's like, it's just solid. And like, it's people like that who I just admire the fuck out of. Just like, because everybody, I think that you see it so regularly. You see people just give up, right? You see people find their limit and they just give up. And it's like, no, push beyond your fucking limit, right? Like, go beyond what it is that you think you're capable of. I've been through so much fucking, in a lot of ways, horrendous shit that like you just wouldn't even think. Like, if somebody was to say to you, oh, you're going to have to do this today. You would say, fuck off, right? But like when you actually start going through the process and you trust the process, you find out who you are by going through it. Do you know what I mean? Like you find a whole new level to yourself, and it changes your mindset and it changes your perspective in regards to everything.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Yeah, really love it. It's such a message there, as well, as I said. But look, I want to get into your first match back after COVID, which I believe was in OTT. You ended up going up against Adam Maxted and becoming the new OTT World Champion and GN Champion. I suppose, what was it like, I suppose, coming back, having your first match after being in COVID, after being, I suppose, locked away for so long, and you're now the new OTT World Champion and GN Champion?
So initially, because so much had changed during 2020 into 2021, didn't even know what we were coming back to. We were like, this is going to be like a whole new business. You know, we're quite nervous. We were like, okay, we've changed a lot. Like it felt like we'd lived a lifetime in a short space of time. And it felt like the wrestling business had changed a lot during that time as well. So we get off our plane, we get to the venue, we walk through the door. Hey guys, just so you know, you're on in about half an hour's time. You're on first. Okay, we get to the back. We're like, none of this shit has changed at all. It's exactly the fucking same. It's, it's like unorganized. Just walked through the door and told you, get your boots on. You're on soon. Like, oh shit. Okay, cool. So yeah, ended up wrestling Maxted, which is funny because I think he was my last match before everything shut down. I want to say it was either him or it was Moff. I forget now. But yeah, we ended up having first match back, OTT World Champion, GN Champion. Just being excited, it was one of these things where it's like, cool, let's see where we can take this. Let's get things back on track and let's take things to the next level.
As you said there, like you've constantly been working while you're through COVID, working on yourself, getting yourself better. But like, was it strange kind of having to go back through all the traveling through the UK, Ireland, Europe, or did you just take it in your stride and it was like, this is what I want to do, this is what I've been doing?
Yeah, I think that you don't like, this is a thing, right? So from the age of 18 up until what was COVID, like 4 years ago? From 18 to 30. Yeah, so 18 to 32, like I'd never really had more than like a few months off at a time. So being home like for almost like a year and a half, essentially, you kind of get into your routines, you get into your habits, and then having like a regular sleep pattern was something I've never had before, so then you go back to wrestling and you're suddenly like, oh shit, this travel really does affect you, doesn't it? Like, we haven't really traveled anywhere. And then suddenly you're traveling and getting dropped and stuff. And you're like, oh, wow, no wonder why I spent like my 20s in a daze, do you know what I mean? Just being exhausted all the time. So yeah, it was a bit of a wake up call. You're like, oh, damn, you kind of forget after a while how much all this stuff affects you.
I'm just gonna fast forward a bit, just because I'm very cautious at the time at the moment. So I'm gonna fast forward on to, I think it was a poetry slam. Carmen, correct me if I'm wrong. With Omari.
I believe so. Yeah, I believe so.
Obviously, that's the night you dropped the title to Omari. Having Omari's big comeback story of obviously getting injured and come back, and he's already an amazing athlete. But facing you, what was that kind of match like? And was there any kind of like, I don't want to say like weight off shoulders in terms of dropping the title, but like what was it like for you fighting Omari that night?
So the funny thing is I'd spoken to Joe about it because he was talking about the match originally being not for the title and Omari winning, and that got him a title shot at the next show. And I was like, why don't we do like, I pitched like a storyline to him that lasted maybe like 6 months or something. And being like, why, because Wolverhampton was where he was originally from and he was super over back at, pre-pandemic. So I was like, this is a good spot. Why don't we do something here? And he was like, yeah, well, maybe, but I don't think Omari would necessarily be ready for it by then. And then on the day of the show, he's like, yeah, Omari's taking him out. And I was like, what happened to like 6 months worth of build, him not being ready, and now he's ready in like, one night? Do you know what I'm saying? I was like, yeah, but it's just one of those things with wrestling. Do you know what I'm saying? Of like, things get changed all the time, and for whatever reason. And the one thing that I have to say in regards to that match with Amari, right, is I wrestled Amari years ago. And the Amari that I wrestled on that night was a different Amari to the one that I'd wrestled years ago. He had come on leaps and bounds, like just I was amazed. I was like, you're a different animal now, man. Like, and definitely one to watch out for, Yeah, he was just a completely different wrestler. And there were certain little things about a match which I really respected him for, really appreciated his attention to detail. And from that point on, I was like, yeah, cool, man, fucking Amari's great. Like, push him to the fucking moon.
Now, you had a few more appearances after that, one of them being the triple threat match at, I think it was the 8-year anniversary. And then we kind of didn't see you for a while till you came back at, I think it was WrestleRama back in September. And this is the main thing I want to talk about, was a massive pop. The funny, like, there's a funny video of me. I probably fucking roared louder than anybody, just going, "What the fucking Haskins!" What was it like walking out into the Red Cow and just having that roar?
It was great because you know what, like, I think you always anticipate that people are going to forget you, or they're going to be like, oh, that's him, do you know what I mean, or oh no, he's back, fuck's sake, you know what I mean. So it's definitely rewarding when you walk through and you're met with genuine excitement. It's that feeling never gets old.
And I have to ask, because I think it was just close to a year or just over a year absence from OTT. Was there any particular reason for the absence, or?
No, I just stopped getting booked. Like, I wish I had a more exciting reason for you, but no, I think that Joker Bray literally just forgot that I exist. So I went from being like the longest reigning OTT champion to now having the Undertaker gig where I turn up once a year, do my big dive, and then fuck off again.
I'm going to start the undefeated Scrapper Mania pitch now. Let's do it. The Undertaker of British wrestling and Irish wrestling. Carmo, is there anything you want to throw in before I start talking RCW? And
I have two questions that I want to kind of go back to. This is kind of before we're talking about at the moment. One of them is actually Scrapper Mania. You went up against Jordan Devlin, or JD McDonough, as he's now known, for the OTT World, or the OTT World Championship. What was that moment like? And you were also the last person that Jordan Devlin wrestled in OTT. So what was that like, I suppose, going into that match? And that was my first OTT show. And I remember the crowd being so hot for that match. Like, they were all over it.
You'll remember it a lot better than I will. So I actually suffered a concussion midway through the match. And I have zero recollection of anything that happened, right? So it ended up in a weird way being like a science experiment. And it was a complete accident as well. It wasn't anyone's fault. It was I remember halfway through just being like, I'm completely fucked and I don't know how to communicate that that's the case. And even at some point, like, I just don't have any recollection of the match. And this was right when we started doing like the crazy shit, when we're doing like Spanish Fly off the top into Super Brainbuster and stuff. Like, don't remember it. Like, the next thing I remember was being in the back, and I was having a cold shower because I'd thought that like having the cold would bring me out of it, which it did. And then like I remember being sat in the corner and being told like, look, you've suffered a concussion, you need to go to the hospital. And I pulled out my phone to text Vic, and I'd already texted her like 5 times saying I've suffered a concussion. I'm like, well, that's not a good sign, is it? So I was like, yeah, I think you're right. I think I have suffered a concussion. But yeah, so we go to the hospital that night, and I think it was like a 12-hour wait or something. And like my flight was in like 8 hours time, and they were like, you can't fly before you've been checked. And like, I waited for a while, but my phone battery was getting low. I didn't have a book with me. And it literally got to a point where I was like, you know what? Fuck this. After all of this, I'm not going to die on a Ryanair flight. Out of sheer stubbornness, I am not going down to Ryanair. So I discharged myself from the hospital. I went back. I got the flight against everybody's advice. Like, I was like, nope, I'm not fucking dying today. I can go to the hospital when I get home. When I landed in the UK, like the Irish hospital had called me, and they were like, we're ready to see you now. And I was like, I'm in Birmingham, like, just, go on to the next person, basically. But yeah, I went to the hospital later that day, got checked out. Fortunately, everything was fine. Yeah, and then I just had to rest up and kind of get through it. But one thing that I will say is, like, Jordan said to me before the match, he was like, "Look, when we first wrestled, you did a lot for my career, and I want to go out there and I want to repay the favor for you tonight." And I really appreciated that because there was a lot of people who you help along the way, like, never say, at least they never say that. They might be their intentions behind certain things, but they never actually make a point to say, "Hey, look, I really appreciated what you did for me. I want to do the same for you." And I ended up having to, ask to watch the footage back because I was terrified. I was like, I was knocked out. I don't remember any of it, and I was terrified that I'd won, and I was like swinging my dick around in front of like thousands of fans. So I was glad that ended up not being the case.
One of the other things I want to talk about, a pretty big moment as well, obviously, before we kind of get into RCW and stuff, is Defy, where you face Kenta for the World Championship. What was that like, I suppose? And I believe this is a match that was kind of building for quite a while, and then to finally have that match.
You know what? Life is weird, right? Like, so it was just as a prelude, the way that the match got announced was one of my friends who I grew up with, who I used to play wrestle with in the garden, or at his house. He had a job at BBC Radio Oxford as one of their regular hosts, right? So he invited me on. He was like, "Come and talk about, wrestling, what you've got coming up." And at that time, Defy had told me, "Yeah, we want to do you and Kenta for the championship." So, we're on BBC Radio Oxford live, like, got to, with somebody who I used to play wrestle with regularly, got to call out like basically one of my dream matches. So it was so weird how these things kind of come around. And like, kind of going back to like, 2007 when I was living in Portsmouth in this, just bomb site of a flat, basically. I remember I used to watch Kenta matches weekly and being like, I want to be like him and I want to wrestle him one day, right? And then 17 years later, get the opportunity finally. So it was one of these things where, I think if you give anything a long enough lifeline, like anything can sort of manifest and can occur. So it's like really just how long are you going to stick at it? There was a ton of times along the way where I wanted to quit and go off and do something different, but didn't. And I was like, no, continue wrestling because this is something that you've always wanted to do and you've got to count your blessings, So finally got the match with Kenta, was super psyched for it, went out, had a blast, man. Like, and I felt like it was the right time as well, because it was a time where, I'm back in my groove, I'm doing my thing. I can go out there and give him one of the most polished, best versions of myself. And, he's still at a stage of his career where he's, capable and, he can still be Kenta and I can be Haskins and we can go out there and tear it up. And that's exactly what we did.
So I want to move on now to kind of work, just catching up with modern day. Rebel County Wrestling, RCW. This is in a place of right place, right time, because if you go back to your debut, it was for the RCW title against Owen Richards. I think you were actually originally scheduled for the Rebel X title, but obviously Moose pulling out, you were put in with the RCW Championship. Getting that match, especially the PAV. The PAV, I don't know if there's something like it over in the UK, is very different to any type of venue here in Ireland. Going out into the PAV, what's that kind of feeling like, going up against Owen Richards?
Like you say, it's a very different venue. And I know that I've done venues that are similar to it, but none like initially stand out, The vibe to it, though, is just, people are there because they want to have a good time. They want to watch good wrestling. They want to shout and they want to enjoy it, And that's whenever you get to perform in front of a crowd like that, it's, that's what we do this for, right? Like nobody wants to go and wrestle for people that just want to sit on their hands. So it was great getting to, perform there for the first night. And, yeah, I mean, like it was cool as well because we had the dynamic that we both had managers, which is, quite rare that Vic and I actually go up against another duo. So that was a fun dynamic that added to the match. And it's kind of one of these weird things where, if you look over like the last, few shows that this story wasn't supposed to happen. It's just kind of unraveled in the way that it has. Is, you know, sometimes it can feel like there are, you know, forces at play that just kind of end up forcing things to occur, which otherwise, you know, you never initially would have ended up planning.
Now, one thing in that match I want to talk about, and it has it's nothing between you and Owen, but poor Tom, Pop Culture Pod, the poor cameraman, who got caught in the crossfire. That shows off the speed of you.
Yeah, it made me rethink my offense a little bit as well. So like what happened was is that I use this, like it's almost like a reverse 619, kind of like a little whip through the ropes. And I've started using it into like a lariat. I call it the rewind lariat. Now, obviously, like the Pab's a small venue, so you know the camera guys are quite close up against the ring, and especially if you've never seen me before or even know that I'm coming, you don't really know what to expect. And here I come, flying legs through the ropes, kick this poor guy straight in the face. Yeah, bust him open, and like you know, then I'm back into the ring. So I'm in the ring, yeah, trying to do my thing, wrestling. Owen Richards looking over and just thinking, like, because I didn't even see him with the camera. Like, I just saw that I'd clipped somebody, and now this guy's bleeding, and somebody else is holding the camera. So I was like, "Fuck!" I'm thinking lawsuit. I'm thinking I've just kicked this poor fan in the face. Like, what have I done? Oh no! I'm thinking like you know, I'm gonna have to get to the back, and I'm so sorry. You know what I mean? Like, they'll never bring me back again. But fortunately, yeah, he was yeah, he's made a sturdy stuff. So yeah, I'm glad that he survived it, and yeah, fair fucks to him as well, because Vic really put him over. She said, you know what, I think I kicked the camera, I kicked him in the face, but he managed to like catch a camera and carry on filming, even
Yeah.
though he's like, yeah, gushing blood out of his face, bless him. So yeah, I did go and make sure that he was okay afterwards, and you know, that he wasn't going to sue me. You know, I wanted to make sure
My
that
favorite
his
thing
nose.
my favorite thing of all of that was Vic went from, you know, the intense screaming, roaring for you manager to she went proper mammy mode. She's, oh Jesus Christ, are you okay? Down with him, making sure he's all right, getting the tissue, everything. She went proper mammy mode.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that like we are regularly accused of doing at shows, because like everyone calls us like, you know, their parents basically, like, you know, fucking even Moff, she's like, you're like my mum and dad, and we're like 2 years older than you. What the fuck is your problem? It's time that you stop being such a fucking mess. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, like yeah, I think that is one of those things, isn't it? You just can't switch off dad mode all the time, and it quickly comes out as well.
And then obviously we get to the next RCW show, and you're in finally you're in the Rebel X Division Championship match. It's yourself, Terry Thatcher, Fabio, and Robbie X, which absolute banger in my opinion, because it was just so different to the other Rebel X matches I've had. My favorite Rebel X match, the difference between all of you, just brilliant. But to walk in to your second RCW show, walk out with the Rebel X title. What was the kind of thoughts afterwards? Because apparently, according to yourself, it was 2 years since you last held the title.
Yeah, yeah, man. Like that was the kind of like the mad thing. I think that like the OTT championship was the last championship that I had. So when I lost that in July 2022, yeah, through the whole year of 2023 without championship. And like this is like I want to say this is probably like the longest run that I had. No, that's a lie. Like I guess like I wasn't a champion during COVID either. So yeah, I don't know. It was the first time where I was very aware. I was like, oh, like I haven't won a championship in ages. You know what I mean? And then I was very excited at the Rebel X thing, because you know I haven't wrestled Robbie X in a long time, and he's somebody that's come on leaps and bounds. You know, he's somebody else who's absolutely killing it right now. So I was very excited at the prospect of getting to tear it up with him. And it's good as well because it's one of those divisions that is seen as being like your fast-paced action kind of style matches, and I love being in those kind of matches. So yeah, once again, it's just something that I'm very much looking forward to. And now as the champion, I'm going to be booked in those kind of matches a lot more.
And obviously, your night was not over there. And we spoke to Billy Bedlam about this moment, but CBL gets injured, and Andy Steele's just kind of out the ring cutting a promo, and it's Sen Haskins. what was the kind
You
of
want the full scoop on this? Do you want the full scoop on this scenario?
go
Let's hear
for
it. Let's hear it.
So this is how bizarre the whole thing was, right? Is that the new champions were going to do this championship parade at the end of the show, right? So that's all we knew, is that we needed the championships and we needed to be ready. So, sure enough, I've, just got, my belt on, like, we're stood at the back of the hall, we're waiting for, the end of the show. And Vic and I are watching the ring and we're like, something feels kind of off here. Like, is this supposed to be happening? Like there's, because Andy Steele, he's holding up the championship and we're like, this is kind of weird to do like a championship parade with like a heel champion, but who are we to judge? You know what I mean? So anyway, the promoter comes backstage and he's freaking out and I'm like, what's wrong? And he's like, I need somebody to do something. And I was like, what's up? He's like, CBL's hurt. He's out of the match. And I'm like, well, what do you need? Do you need like a happy go home moment, or do you need like a match? And he's like, he's umming and ahhing and he can't quite decide. And then like, I think he's like, get like a happy go home, right? So like, I'm like, cool, I'm your man. So like, I just go storming off down to the ring, right? So, and I've heard Andy Steele say like, oh, as a champion, I'll fight anybody anytime. So I slide into the ring, people start cheering and I'm just trying to think to myself, I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing here. So like, I'm trying to buy time to like, basically figure out what the play is here. What is it that we're going to do? So I'm talking on the microphone and I'm, just engaging and what have you. And then suddenly the bell rings and I'm like, oh, I'm wrestling right now. Like you see me take, like I'm wearing my watch, I take off my watch and my merch bag. Like I just put it down in the corner, we end up wrestling and then, ended up about halfway through. Vic kind of leans through the ropes and like, she gives me the call. She's like, you're taking the belt, fucking do him. Right. So like I put him in the sharpshooter and he taps out and suddenly I'm a double champ. And like, I was like, yay. Like, I was like, fuck, like, I almost felt like guilty in a way because I was like, I've forced you to give me like 2 championships tonight. Like that wasn't the case at all. It's just I was trying to step in and fucking save the show from ending on like a sour note. But basically I ended up, and like I'll be 100% honest with you right now. Here is the full fucking scoop, right? I didn't even know what championship it was I'd won. Like, I was like, I hadn't been paying any attention to the rest of the show. So I was like, fuck, I've just won a championship and I don't know what it is. So I'm like holding it up. I'm like, I'm the double champ. Yeah. And then afterwards I was like, oh, fuck, it's the world championship. Cool. Sounded like, like fucking super up for it. But yeah, at that point, it was just a case of like, hey, the show's fucking going to end on a bitter note. If we don't do something, we need someone to do something. So I stepped in and that was the result. Now I'm fucking double champ.
Well, now one thing I want to talk about, because Owen Richards and Andy Steele have been very vocal on RCW's social media, calling your title win void because of what happened and stuff like that. Obviously, an eventual unification match is going to happen. Is like I don't know if you've ever faced Owen Richards, but there's a lot of savior activity. Actually, sorry, you did. You fought him before for the world title. We already mentioned this. You know what the savior activity is like. Are you going to come prepared more now, having that title with you, or what's the kind of the mindset that might go into this unification match?
Well, look, who knows, right? All I know is this: is that Owen Richards and myself, we weren't supposed to wrestle the first time, and it happened. I wasn't supposed to be in a world championship match, and now I'm the world champion, right? So we're in this weird dance where forces that are beyond our control are forcing our hands, and is forcing us to come together and take this route, right? Now, this is the thing that I would say, right? Is like I have a soft spot in my heart for the Irish wrestling fans, and Rebel County, I love a good rebel spirit, right? And I feel like the Rebel County finally has its own little rebel now that is good for business, shall we say, good to promote. Like, who do you want as your RCW World Champion? Do you want Owen Richards, who looks like, a Jeff Hardy fan that you'll see at a night cashier window when you're up at an Apple Greens at 2 a.m. in the morning? Or do you want the hottest independent wrestler in the world today to be your champion? It's entirely up to you, right? But what is for sure is that we're going to come together. We're going to have to wrestle again. We're going to have to unify the championship, and we're going to have to see at the end of the day who's really got the goods and who's going to be the RCW champion going forward.
So the main thing we got out of all that is you spent a lot of time in Apple Greens looking at Jeff Hardy wannabes.
At 2 a.m. in the morning. That's how I know that he is one. I'm like, look at this, Did he cut his hair at the last show? I saw a picture.
He did.
Yeah.
He looks even worse now. Now he looks like a fat Dave Meltzer. So, who do you want as your champion? Do you want the rugged, sexy fucking rebel man? Or do you want a fat Dave Meltzer fan, as your RCW champion? The choice is yours. All I'm saying is that as a double champ, I'm willing to defend both championships and both nights. Why? Because I'm stuck with small man syndrome and I love the challenge. So, hey, RCW, think about it. Think carefully about what it is going forward that you want to do, and let's do it. Let's see.
Love it. I will say this: I was at the most recent RCW show a week or two ago, and there was fans there that were disappointed that you weren't on that show. So if that doesn't tell you who they want as their world champion, I don't know what does.
Yeah, I mean, I was disappointed I wasn't at that show either, but fortunately enough, I was out in Seattle for Defy, and that date had already occurred by the time that the second RCW date had been announced. So, but hey, I'll be back soon enough.
Now, and one thing that we had not announced, but it was teased in their December show. At the moment, RCW have the Super X tournament going on, with Terry Thatcher, who's the first person to qualify to hopefully meet yourself. Obviously, we'll see what happens when we get to December for the Rebel X title in a match that's it's a little ultimate, if we do say so. If this type of matchup happens, I don't want to kind of give away what the tease was that Billy Bedlam gave us last week.
Ultimate X.
But Terry Thatcher being inside there, and who knows who else can be in there? We can have someone like a Fabio, Martin Steers, a lot of Paul London as well, who got announced. What are you kind of looking like? Bring all challengers at me. I'm looking to go with this Rebel X title and run as fast as possible as it and kick another cameraman.
Yeah, 100%. Look, at the end of the day, I'm 18 years deep in this career. I'm successful not because I've hidden away from challenges. And look, like I said about COVID and shit, right? If I'm fucking running over hills at 3 a.m. in the morning wearing a weight vest, do you really think I give a fuck about what skinny little runt you're going to send my way to try and wrestle me? Do you know what I mean? A lot of these guys are not on my level. So I'm just not that fearful of, being in the ring with a lot of them. This is a thing that I get all the time, I'll come to a dressing room, people will instantly rush up to my opponent and say to them, "Oh, you did so well. How did you do? Is everything okay?" And then people will just look at me and be like, "Oh, you're right." Do you know what I mean? Which means either one of two things. One is either I'm the final boss in some regard, and that if you can hang with me, then it really means something. Or alternatively, it means I am that dreadful that everybody else has to fucking carry me. And that's, people are rushing up to them and saying, "You did so well," because I'm just that fucking terrible. Now, based off of, everything that has been said and done so far, I don't think it's the latter. So, yeah, a lot of these guys, if you want to get into the ring with me, cool. But you have to bear in mind that I operate off of ADHD, a lot of caffeine, and a lot of unresolved childhood trauma. So, what I need is a padded cell. And with that kind of energy of, a dog playing with its favorite fucking rag, right? That's what you're going to expect. That's what you're going to get once the fucking bell rings. If that's something that you really want, cool. Let's have a blast.
That's a brilliant answer.
Very
Brilliant.
good answer. Yeah, very good answer.
Carmo, before we move on to the fan Q&A, is there anything you want to throw in here?
I have two questions, and I'm gonna leave one of them till the end, maybe. But one of them that I really want to ask, and I kind of saved it till the end for a reason. You've talked quite a bit about Vic and how she's been by your side for a lot of your career, and we haven't really talked about it because I wanted to bring up this question. But like having Vic beside you for a lot of your career, one, how important has she been to your career, and I suppose the second one, how nice is it to have her there as well by your side?
It's great, she's my best friend. She's my soulmate. Like, we hang out all the time and we never get fed up of each other. Like, there's no point where I'm like, where I need my own space or anything, like we can hang out, we can just be anywhere in the fucking world and we can have the best time, and that's it. It's like, we're very fortunate, we're very blessed that with this job we get to travel around and we get to go to different places. We were in Scotland at the weekend, right? So we're in Scotland Monday during the day we go up to Loch Lomond and we spend a few hours up there. And it's funny because while we're very similar, we're also polar opposites. She's stood on this little kind of like pebbly beach. She's like got like 3 hoodies on. I'm in my swim shorts and I'm out bathing in the cold loch. Do you know what I mean? Like, so we're complete opposites in that sense, but we get to travel everywhere together and we get to go to all these different places, see these different sites. And dude, I'm not gonna lie to you, the fucking hotel room sex is so hot, right? Like fucking, that's the best bit of all of it, is you get to work with your best mate and then you have the best time once the show's finally done.
Love it. I got to pass it over to Mark for the fan questions.
So we have a few questions here from our lovely audience that are listening to us. I'll start with this one because I do like this one. Top 3 Irish opponents that you haven't faced yet but would love to.
Oh, that's a good question, because you know what? I feel like, I don't know, like the majority, yeah. I think like that's a really good one. I don't know. I've wrestled a lot of good Irish wrestlers. One I definitely have to give a shout out for is Logan Bryce, right? Because he's a real good mate of mine, and he said that like before he stops wrestling permanently, he wants to wrestle me at least once. So yeah, as he is genuinely one of my good mates, like I would love to be able to get into the ring with him and do that before we're too fucking old to do it. You know what I mean? So let me think. You know what? I don't have another 2. Like, I've wrestled a lot of the, so many Irish talent are, ridiculously talented. I just think I've wrestled like all of them. So I don't know anybody else off the top of my head who I could say, I haven't wrestled that I would want to wrestle. There's definitely those who I want to wrestle again. LJ Cleary, he's fucking wicked. He's somebody who, similar scenario. I remember wrestling him at a show and I didn't even know he was at the show. Like my opponent, it was Robbie X. He got injured. Suddenly LJ's music hit. He comes out. I'm like, oh, LJ's here. Cool. And we end up wrestling like 20 minutes. Like, I think he's ridiculously good. And he's gone to Japan now. He's got that experience. I'd love to get back in the ring with him, and I'd also love to wrestle Jordan Devlin again. I think he's somebody who's wicked, himself and Finn Balor. I got to wrestle Finn years ago before he got to the Fed. And he's somebody that I'd also like to get in there with. So, just having up-to-date matches with everybody that's, continue to get better, because I think we've all got better with age. So let's see what we're actually capable of now.
This one's kind of a 2-parter. What are your top 3 OTT matches and then your top 3 matches overall?
So my top 3 OTT matches, I had one with, so it was actually, I think my first singles match at OTT was against Mark Andrews. Now, bear in mind that this match is like, 15, 20 minutes of us just, going crazy and doing super like cool shit and that, and like the people were eating it up. Bearing in mind that this was the first match back that I'd had after 3 months off, after being told that I may never wrestle again because of the issues with my neck, right? Like, it was one of these things where I remember somebody had said to me, like, what are you going to do? Just go out there and wrestle 20 minutes and, you've had 3 months off, you've not touched a ring, what are you going to do? And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And that was the end result of it. So, it was, it was epic. I had a match with Sammy Callahan. I remember loving and thinking that was a great one as well. And one of my matches with Terry Thatcher, I remember it was one where I came out at a venue and I didn't have the championship with me, and I went back to the curtain, and it was Vic comes out with the championship, and it was the first time that she'd accompanied me at OTT, and that was also one that stood out in my mind as just being one that we'd gone out there and left it all in the ring. And then three matches, one of my 3 favorite matches of all time, right? That I've had, or just general overall 3 favorite matches?
It just says top 3 matches. Oh, sorry, top 3 matches of your career overall.
Okay, so I would say that I had a match with Tommaso Ciampa, which was one that taught me a lot. Ridiculous talent. I really enjoyed being in the ring with him. He's definitely one of my favorite matches. The match I had with Johnny Gargano as well, it's no surprise to me that him and Ciampa have both gone on to be big stars, because being in a ring with them, you can definitely see why. They've just gone on and continue to kill it. And then let me see, what's a good third one? I don't know if there's an individual third one, but anytime I got to wrestle Pete Dunne, Pete was great to be in the ring with. Like I've wrestled him a good handful of times, and it's just one of those guys where you just enjoy being able to tear it up with somebody who's got the goods to go.
One question we have here now is, I'm gonna have to quote this now because it's a whole story. He said before that he originally came to OTT to rebuild his career after his injury. How was the conversation with Joe before he appeared, and what was talked about? One of my favourite matches is his debut against Mark Andrews, which you said, in the Tivoli.
Yeah, so basically I think that the conversation with Joe went something like this. Hey man, are you available this date? Yes. Cool, I'll see you then. And that was pretty much it. Like Joe is a man of very few words. Here's your flight. Cool, see you then. So that was it. And it was one of these things where I don't even think like I ever talked to Joe about it. Like it was just a case of like, that was where I was at that point in my career. Like, I'd been on a roll over those last few months. I won the Smash Wrestling Championship from Gargano, ended up going out to Canada defending that. I got to PWG in September, made it to the semifinals. Where I lost to the eventual winner of the tournament, had just been going on, like, building momentum, and then had these issues with my neck that came along, and it was like a bump in the road. So it was like, cool, well, now we're getting back on track, and OTT was the stomping ground to do that. And that's definitely what I felt like ended up happening. I got the chance to get in there with so many ridiculous talents, whether they be Irish born, or whether they be imports, or whether they be guys who had come over from the UK with myself, and just continue to build that name and reputation. Ended up winning the NLW championship and the main event at the stadium show that year. It only took from February to August, I think, to become the main man in OTT. So it was a very short space of time, but it was definitely, it was like the right steps on the journey back to, doing things the way that I wanted to do them.
Another question here is, what has been the most challenging moment or obstacle you have faced in your career to date?
You know what? I don't know. I think that in a lot of ways, like maybe like the last few years since coming out of COVID, because it's kind of like one of these weird things where like during COVID, all I could focus on was like, how can I be a better asset to the wrestling business? And then like coming out of that, like, I think that because this whole new perception of new generation and you're part of the old generation kind of came along. Like now people just kind of expect you to be like, oh, now you're just kind of like a helping hand. Now you're just, a whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, we don't really kind of need you anymore. That's the overall feeling that I've definitely felt from a lot of places, whether intentional or unintentional, since coming back. It's like, no, motherfuckers, you don't realize I'm a fucking contender. I am the best fucking contender I've ever been right now, right? Because I'm 36. yeah, okay, in the grand scheme of wrestling, that might seem like quite old, but in the grand scheme of life, that's still fucking young, right? And yeah, I've got 18 years of a fucking professional wrestling career behind me. I'm far more capable than any other fucking 36-year-old that you can put me in a fucking room with. Do you know what I mean? So fucking do something with me, right? Because I am here. The past 18 years have flown by. If I've got another 18 years in front of me, I'd be surprised. So, you know, fucking like, let's do something while I'm still about, because, you know, I'm not going to be here forever.
And final question I have here, in regards to your recent Progress appearance, was that kind of a swan song, or could we expect to see more Haskins in Progress?
Well, you know, I have this weird relationship with Progress where basically they've, you know, they tell me they have plans for me and then don't book me for shows. So we'll see. You know, I went out and represented them for, you know, in Defy, you know, what, 2 weeks ago. So I anticipate that they're not done with me because I saw the management there. But, you know, it's one of these things where, you know, they've got so many different people that they're trying to please and so many different, you know, ideas and what have you. And you can never tell, man. Do you know what I mean? Like, some people will tell you everything that you want to hear and then just you'll never hear from them again. So, you know, it was kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to win the Progress Championship, because once again, it would have to force their hand and they'd have to bring me back, you know? So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm not done with Progress. If Progress are done with me, then like they definitely haven't had the balls to say it. And I don't think that they, you know, they are done with us. So yeah, I just don't know when the next time will be that I'll be back there.
No, that's perfect. That's all the fan questions we have. Carmo, you said you had another question that you want to throw into the end.
It actually got asked during the fan questions. It was your top 3 favorite matches of your career, which got asked. So,
well, I'll throw in one more then because I had a different type of one. And this one, it kind of goes on to what someone had asked earlier, but it's more your perspective. Is there 5 wrestlers anywhere, any promotion, any country, anything you think people should have eyes on?
Ooh, yes. So, I mean, I think it's easy to say that guys like Doris and Leon Slater at this point, if you're not having eyes on them, like, you're just not paying attention. Like, they're 2 guys that are definitely coming up and you know, are you know, yeah, they're going to be the next kind of like guys that really, you know, make names for themselves internationally. You know, I was out in Seattle in Defy with Doris, you know, like, so he's already there. You know, he's out making a name for himself in GCW. You know, I think that he'll be the next one on the way up to a bigger company. You know, I think Leon's already there. I just don't think that anybody's utilized on them to quite to the extent that they could be utilized on in the UK to be that next level of homegrown star. Because that's the thing that I think that Progress really had from like 2015 onwards, was they were
Perfect. Carmo, is there anything else that you want to throw in, or?
no, and the reason why is because we've taken up 2 hours of Mark's time, and we could go for another 2 hours, but we'll save that for another time.
At some point, Vic's going to come in and be like, could you fucking give me back my husband, please?
want to go to bed. Yeah.
Mark, is there any social medias, any events that you're doing, or anything that you want to plug, or? Perfect. And you can follow us, FiveMarks Pod, on X and TikTok. FiveMarks Podcast everywhere else. Carmel, I'm going to throw it over to you now to sign us off.
Absolutely. Mark, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure having a chat with you.
No, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Can't wait to have you on again at some stage. But look, we have been the FiveMarks Podcast, and for another week, we are officially ding, done.